Regulated Industries Committee to order. We have a series of bills on our agenda today. We're going to make a lot of progress, and I'm going to start, with 557. You may not have the sub in your folders yet, gentlemen, so just hold tight. Representative Stevens, if you will, podium's great. Just lay this out to us a little bit, what you're trying to accomplish and what your bill does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. What this does is it allows for us to join the rest of the country, if you will. The APRNs and PAs, it allows them to prescribe Class 2 narcotic drugs. The only other state that APRNs cannot prescribe in is Oklahoma in the whole country. The only other state that PAs can't prescribe in is Kentucky. So this brings us more in line. What this bill does is it allows them, after they've been licensed for a full year and in practice, under a protocol for an APRN or under a job description for a PA, to prescribe a 5-day emergency supply of a Class 2 drug. They're required to biennially take a continuing education, and they must directly evaluate the patient in person. Somebody can't call in and say, I need a 5-day supply of this particular drug. They've got to evaluate them before that particular person can prescribe a drug. On the substitute, I saw where you added, and I agree with the addition, to help the physicians in these disability placards. It allows the PAs and APRNs to also issue those. Okay. That's all the bill does.
There was another area that I've made a change that in the substitute, other than adding the ability of these people to give a disability, parking pass, is to take away, make it clear you can't prescribe to people under
18
years old. There was some extra language that gave exceptions to that in your original bill that I removed. Is that all right?
That's fine with me.
Okay. Also made a limitation you allowed in your bill the prescribing of Schedule 2 drugs, and I removed that with a couple of exceptions that we would leave. Let me make sure I got it right. Not on any line yet. Lines 58 and 59. You basically we're allowing Schedule 2 drugs, and I said they were excluded, all Schedule 2 except hydrocodone, oxycodone, or compounds thereof. I was concerned that Schedule 2 also includes morphine, fentanyl, and some more serious narcotic drugs, and I wasn't comfortable with that. So we reduced it. And if you were to look at kind of, if I've got my science right, the order of strength, you would have hydrocodone first, and then oxycodone's about 10 times as powerful, and then it only goes up from there to morphine and fentanyl, and I am not comfortable with PAs or ARPNs prescribing those medications given the opioid crisis.
I understand. And
you all right with that? Is that
I would have used hydrocodone compounds, but
it's
hydrocodone
in there as well.
Okay. Yes, sir.
It says or compounds thereof. That's referencing hydrocodone in case you want to put acetaminophen or something in there with it, which is commonly done, right?
Which is actually preferred because you can't take too much of it without it becoming toxic. So it's a very good addition.
All right, good. I usually would have had an occasion to talk with you in person before I edited or, we'll say, perfected your bill, but I wanted to make sure that that's satisfactory.
We're eager to move along.
All right. Any questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off before you finished your presentation? All right. Any committee members have questions for the sponsor of the bill? All right. Mr. Senator Summers.
5 days, not a repeat of 5 days. It's just a one-time filling, correct?
Yes, sir. You can't refill a prescription of a Class 2 narcotic. Right. Class 3, 4, and 5, yes, but not a Class 2.
That's right. That's where it is. Thank you.
All right. That's all the questions you have. Thank you. If you'll stand by, we have quite a few people that would like to be heard. Sheila Humestone.
Who's on deck?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Sheila Humberstone with Stonebridge Consulting, here in front of you today on behalf of GAPA, the Georgia Association of Physician Assistants. I'm here with Amy Reeves, who is our legislative chairperson and a longtime practicing physician assistant. We are so grateful not only to the bill sponsor for bringing the bill, but for you all taking time out of what is an extraordinarily busy time to hear this very important bill. We know that you all realize that we have a healthcare workforce shortage. You've heard it in this committee, in fact, more than once. You've worked on legislation to try to help protect our healthcare workers in our hospital systems, and we are grateful. Quite frankly, there's just not enough doctors to cover the state. The advanced practice providers fill in and supplement the activities of the doctors to enable those doctors to see more patients. Someone much smarter than I made an allusion that it's not wholly dissimilar to a legal structure that has folks that work under them like a paralegal. The paralegal takes care of a lot of the work so that the lawyer can do what is in the sort of top line effort. Our PAs and our APRNs are taking care of patients today. They are working closely with their physicians. For the PAs, we are governed at the Georgia Composite Medical Board. We are licensed by that composite medical board. The physicians for whom we are licensed to are also licensed by the composite medical board. But for that specific PA to work with that specific doctor, we have to get an additional permission, an additional form signed at the board level, at the individual level by that composite medical board. So that's sort of the structure on the PA side. The APRNs is a bit different. The only reason they need a nurse protocol agreement is to write prescriptions for Schedule 3, 4, and 5. This bill would obviously pull those limited Schedule 2s in there. So the reason for the Schedule 2 is that there are plenty of places, particularly in rural Georgia, where there is not a physician on site. They may rotate between clinics, and they may be there every second day or every third day. And so what we want is, on that Friday, if there is an emergency situation, for that PA or APRN to be able to provide that very short course of medication to last them until that physician can see them a couple of days later. So that's sort of the purpose for that portion of the bill. The secondary portion of the bill is on the composite medical board. So if we think of, again, that licensure pipeline, right now we know there's a clog in that pipeline. And it's not the composite medical board's fault. They're having a workforce shortage as well. But every single one of those licenses has to be approved at the individual level, as well as those licenses to practice with a particular doctor. So what this bill seeks to do is to say, look, if you've already got an approved protocol agreement or an approved job description, and it is substantially the same kind of physician that you're working under, the same kind of PA, that in the same kind of setting, then you just have to file and use that. You have to give notice that you're working, but it would be deemed approved. And so that's sort of what the bill seeks to do. I'm grateful to you all for hearing it. Amy can speak far more elegantly than I can on the practice of being a PA today. Any questions that you have on the clinical side, I will turn it over to Amy.
Amy, we'd like to hear from you. Just give us your viewpoints.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for letting me have this time. I just wanted to say that, like I brought Tina Hood, who is our one of our many rural emergency medicine physician assistants, and there are times when there is no doctor in the emergency room, and she is having to admit patients for proper pain management because, in the hospital, we're allowed to order anything that the patient needs, but as far as like a prescription for them to take home, you can't always manage fractures or kidney stones with Tylenol number 3, which is a Schedule 3 class of medication. We would have to abide by the PDMP, the prescription drug database that we have to check before we were to give a narcotic. And this would be limited to PAs in certain fields. Like, it wouldn't be every PA or every nurse practitioner. In my field, I would say, like, I would need ADHD medication way more than I would need any like hydrocodone working in pediatrics, especially because we have a solo physician practice, and she's about to go out on maternity leave, so that's going to leave 4.5 months with no physician there to manage our ADHD patients. But this would not mean that like a pulmonary PA could just prescribe hydrocodone. These would be, these you still have to practice within your licensure and within your field of medicine. So if your supervising physician is in neurosurgery and they are going home from a skull fracture or whatever, like that would be an indication if that's something that, your supervising physician would do in that situation. I'm glad to take any questions.
Recognize Senator again for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two things. I want to brag on the PAs, because I was actually out of state, had an accident, said they became very ill, and the PA saved my life. But I'm worried that, are you related to Burt Reed by any chance? And is it true this is just a ploy to get his stinger into somebody else? As a former Buzz guy.
Okay, you are no longer recognized, Senator again.
The hell, what was that?
I got a text. I got a text from Bert today. Told me to feel free to ask you all the hard questions, and you were
Feel free,
prepared to
yes.
answer them. Anybody
Yes.
else have questions for Amy?
If I might, the only other
You
thing
can.
that
Go
I
ahead.
might add is, at the end of the day, these job descriptions and protocol agreements, the physician is in control. And so if Chairman Cowser, you were the doctor and I was your PA, if you did not feel comfortable that I had the experience or the decision-making skills to do this in your practice, then you would not afford me the opportunity to do that. So it always goes back to that job description or the nurse protocol agreement. At the end of the day, the physician is at the heart of this relationship, and they determine what it is that we can do.
I've come to view it as a force multiplier. It allows doctors to serve more patients, and I think it's particularly effective in rural areas or less populated with doctor shortages. I like to see my doctor, but there are some people that fall in love with their PAs, or I guess APRNs as well, and almost consider them their doctor. I'm comfortable as long as there's that protocol and that supervision. And my review of the bill, I think we're in good shape.
Thank you.
We have 6 other people who'd like to be heard. You never know. They might change your mind, so be open-minded. All right, thank you.
Thank
No
you.
other questions. Aubrey Valines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'll be brief. Aubrey Valines with the Advanced Practice Registered Nurses. I have Robin Pinston here with me today, can answer any specific questions. It's been thoroughly explained. Unless you have questions of me or Robin, I'll waive further testimony.
No questions. Thank you for expressing your support in a concise manner. Abigail Thompson, my former intern turned lobbyist superstar.
No pressure with that intro.
Make me proud.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Abigail Thompson. I serve as Director of Government Relations and Advocacy for Shepherd Center. We're a 152-bed private nonprofit hospital based in Atlanta, and we specialize in the rehabilitation of spinal cord injury as well as brain injury, multiple sclerosis, and other neuromuscular conditions. Shepherd Center is in support of House Bill 557 and the overall intent of the bill. We are particularly supportive of the new language in Section 4, beginning on lines 189 through 292, that would allow APRNs and PAs to issue disability parking permits when necessary. So majority of our patient population is dealing with a disability to some degree or have mobility issues that require a wheelchair or a walker. So the new language is very important to improve the efficiency of our day-to-day operations. when treating patients. As standard practice, our APRNs and PAs operate under the direction of a physician protocol agreement. Additionally, our patients are managed by a comprehensive team of doctors, nurses, and therapists who all work in consistent collaboration with one another. So authorizing our frontline staff and our skilled nursing practitioners to issue disability parking permits in outpatient settings would be extremely helpful for our hospital and overall workflow. So I just want to thank the chairman, or the sponsor of the bill, Chairman Ron Stevens, for allowing us to incorporate the new language and for all of his work on this issue, and also appreciate you for allowing the legislation to be heard, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Thompson? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Kyle Wingfield, Georgia Public Policy Foundation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Kyle Wingfield with the Georgia Public Policy Foundation. Y'all have a full docket today, so I'll be very brief. We do support this bill and thank the sponsor for bringing it forward as a way to, as the chairman said, be a force multiplier for our healthcare professionals in Georgia. I'll only add that we have a recent study on our website at georgiapolicy.org that delves into this issue more deeply and broadly as well. If there's any data that the members of the committee are looking for, is probably in there, and if you're looking for it, we can help you find that.
Any questions? All right, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And last, Bethany Sharer with Medical Association of Georgia. Glad to hear your perspectives.
Thank you. My name is Bethany Sharer with the Medical Association of Georgia. We represent physicians across the state of Georgia in all practice settings and specialty types. I want to thank Chairman Stevens, as well as you, Chairman Cowsert, for your work on this bill. Obviously, MAG and physicians across the state have been increasingly concerned about the opioid crisis. There has been a lot of work done in the physician community to reduce the number of opioid prescriptions that have been written. We are definitely seeing a downward trend on that front. And we, obviously maintain concerns about increasing the number of prescriptions that may be out there, but we appreciate the narrow tailoring that has been done within this bill in order to try to address many of those concerns. We also appreciate the work done as far as some of the ADHD and stimulant medications. Obviously, those prescriptions are given out in accordance with very carefully done diagnoses. They are not, oftentimes that takes multiple visits to a physician before a prescription may be written. From an emergency perspective, so if someone already has a prescription for that, we are concerned about how insurance may treat a partial fill, so that we appreciate addressing that as well. And I believe that we've addressed the subsequent prescription language, which I think was very vague and may have led to some refilling in a way that did not comply with the original intent of the legislation. So we appreciate all of the work that's been done on this, and I'm happy to take any questions.
We have taken that subsequent prescription refilling out of this, so PAs and ARPMs would not have permission to do that after the 5 days.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
So can you tell me, what's hydrocodone and oxycodone used for? What are the reasons to use that strong of a medication?
So typically you're going to see them used for a type of pain. So in the acute space, you're going to see that for post-surgical pain or some sort of trauma-related incident that may happen. For the pediatric population, we're seeing a huge movement away from that in general. When we wrote the PDMP law that required physicians and other prescribers to check the PDMP for your opioid prescriptions and your benzodiazepines, we looked at a 3-day limit before you had to check the PDMP, with the idea that it can take just a few doses before somebody can become addicted to those medications. So we are trying to make sure that we're tailoring down prescriptions so that they're for much shorter periods of time. The CDC has pretty robust guidelines when it comes to the prescribing of opioids. They've actually recently kind of gone back and modified those, and they're modified every couple of years. And so for most, opioids, you see those in the case of an acute injury or something like that. We are seeing a large movement in the practice of medicine away from managing chronic pain with opioids to the extent that we possibly can. So I think most physicians have moved their patients to kind of non-opioid alternatives on the chronic pain front when possible. But then we use pain physicians who carefully monitor reactions and the possibility for addiction on that side.
So this is just used in these acute emergency situations to sort of tide the patient over until they can get to their regular physician within the 5-day period.
Right. And, one of the things you think about is that, like in a post-surgical pain or even in a post-traumatic injury situation, you're likely going to have a lessening of symptoms after a couple of days. So you're trying to get the person who may have a traumatic injury to the point where that pain has lessened, whether that's a reduction in swelling or, your body kind of adjusts to the situation that they're in. From other things, it may be that they need to move on to see a general surgeon or an orthopedic surgeon or something like that if there's a kind of continuation of the pain past a few days.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Thank you. Chairman Stevens, would you like any concluding comments, or
Thank
you
you.
said your piece? All right. He waves. I recognize Senator Chairman Ginn for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Said I move do pass the on H Bill 557.
All right, multiple seconds, and that is by committee substitute LC 33950SS. Any further discussion or any proposed amendments? All righty. In that case, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, your bill passes. Do you know who you want to carry this in the Senate? Larry Walker? All right. You make a note of that, please, Cindy. Thank you very much. We appreciate your good work on this. House Bill 498, Representative Danny Mathis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I got it.
Thank you, members of the committee. House Bill 498, I'm on LC 365421. This bill is to reinstate a lapsed funeral director's license. This bill was brought through the House, the Senate, signed by the governor, but the Attorney General's office deemed that it was only going forward, not in the arrears to 10 years. So what we're doing now is fixing that. What we want to do, if you've had your license lapse for 10 years, you can reinstate with the penalties, and you can also make sure you have the continuing education if that's so be it on a certain age limit. So pretty much that's the bill. I'd appreciate your favorable consideration. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer them for you.
We are pretty familiar with it. We passed it last year.
Yes, sir.
And it got out of the body. Any members have questions?
Do pass, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I got a motion do pass from the Vice Chairman and a second from Senator Albers. Any discussion or other proposed amendments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Passes unanimously. Thank you for being with us.
Appreciate you. Thank you, man.
Chairman Jaspers, House Bill 406. Those in the audience will recognize that we had a committee substitute as we discussed at the last meeting, the changes that Chairman Jaspers and Leader Gooch had agreed to. I don't think we have any big surprises. I had copies of this left out on the table so that everybody could follow along. If you need one, there may be a couple more there right in front of that podium. If you would just walk us through, Mr. Chairman, what you did, if it satisfied your concerns, and you conceded to the leader on the areas that his were better, and he conceded to you where yours was better.
Well, we worked very closely together, Mr. Chairman. I sure appreciate leader's work on this, and also Ben Gerard in his office, and Jenna working on the electrification of transportation. The bill does essentially three things: allows the sale of electricity by the kilowatt, allows for inspection of those electrical charging stations for safety, accuracy, and location, and then allows for the collection of the excise tax. And so that's what it does. You know, we jumped through on part 136 was that highly negotiated work. Mr. Chairman, you gave me a question the other day I needed to look up and find an answer to, and I certainly did that. Lines 42 or 41, 42, you'd asked me what it meant, and some felt in the world that it was unclear that those covered by the Territorial Act could do electric vehicle charging, and this doesn't create an exception, but a clarification only. You know, on 48, we talk about, this comes from the coalition that surrounds, that would want to be in the electric vehicle charging world, and saying that if, we'll just say Georgia Power, who is subject to regulation by the Public Service Commission, if they choose to expand beyond the current limits put on them, they'd have to create a separate entity to do that. Georgia Power certainly does that now in their street light business. They have a separate entity that does that. If you look over, probably the biggest thing we worked on with Senator Gooch was on line 84. We're talking about residences and apartments and multifamily. We worked real hard in the last day or so to get a good, clear definition of what those are and how they're charged, and I appreciate everyone's work on that. Jenna Doley really helped us a lot.
I missed that line number. What line was that on?
It was 80. Yeah. 84. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Worked very hard, and I really appreciate their work on clarifying that. The only other real change from the other day is we get over to the revenue side in section, part 3, was that, on line 314, removing the sunset. As we talked about the other day, making sure that our excise tax keeps up with inflation, as we want to make sure we're fixing those roads and bridges. And then on line 337, revenue wanted us to go to one description of electricity, and so we used that as 9 kilowatt hours. They were very helpful in the last day or two. There were some different groups questioned that 9. They met with them the last day and came to agreement that that's acceptable, and I appreciate Revenue and GDOT working on that.
Senator, again, you good with making sure we mention it's kilowatt hours, not kilowatts?
You're good.
You caught it. You can rest easy this weekend.
And then there's just a little bit of cleanup language, I was just looking through it this morning, like on 394, just a little bit. But that's the bill, Mr. Chairman. I'd be glad to answer any questions, if there are any.
Any members have questions for Chairman Jaspers? Senator, again, you're recognized for a question.
And I hadn't done the math, but I'm sure you've got somebody that has. When I look at the compressed natural gas, you're talking about 110,000 BTUs. And then when you go to liquefied natural gas, or LNG, you're talking about 6.06 pounds. And knowing that the expansion rate on natural gas from LNG to just natural gas is about 600 to 1, are you positive on those math numbers there?
Those are, on 339, go as good as I can be. Yeah, those current law is 6.06.
I'm not done the math, and so
I'm not.
Tested it, but
with those, the current law as
nice
it is right
we had
now.
somebody to confirm that. On line 339 said where he's talking about the LNG being 6.06 pounds. Yep. There's quite a volumetric change from LNG to just natural gas, and I'm thinking about how many cubic feet that's going to be. That's going to be quite
Well,
a
look
bit.
at line 335, Senator, compressed natural gas.
Yeah, I got
Not
you there,
less than
and
110.
BTUs is fine. I'm just wondering, okay, on the LNG, that can also be done in BTUs as well.
Well, if they chose to do it in that, so
Yeah,
I think that would
they're
be
making it hard
from,
for me. I'm gonna have to do the math.
well, we'll both have to get both of us to tutor on that, sir, I do believe, to
But
find
that
that out.
6.06 pounds is the current law?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you should have caught that years ago, Coach.
Hey, no one here. It's been tough.
You had mentioned in your earlier presentation that your version included hydrogen.
Oh,
Tell
yes,
us,
sir.
That's just one line above that, I noticed. And
Yes, sir, it sure does.
Okay.
Looking to the future, especially on heavier trucks, it looks like there is a lot of research being done on EV, Class 8, big trucks. But I think the idea you've seen in other countries is hydrogen is going to be the energy use of choice for that. So we capture that.
other questions from committee members? All right, I have two people signed up to speak to the bill. We'll hear them real quick and then take action. Mark Woodall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Of course, we want to start off, Sierra Club Legislative Chair, our 3 million members and supporters, 75,000 in Georgia. We want to start off, as we have been doing, with commending Leader Gooch and Chairman Jaspers. And let's see, Mr. Chairman, you were on that study committee, and Senator Ginn and Senator Robertson, I believe. Most informative study committee I can ever remember, and certainly the most pages in your report, 700 pages. And we support most of this bill. I mean, the kilowatt per hour charging is definitely the way to go, and the Territorial Act language, and I'll certainly defer to Commissioner Ag here on all that, the Ag language. But we do think we're being premature to put this new tax in. If you refer to page 60 of your 700-page report, you'll see that Georgia would be only the 5th state to implement one of these charging fees per kilowatt hour. And the highest so far in the country is Kentucky at 3 cents per kilowatt hour. Oklahoma, which goes into effect in January of 2024, is going to be 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And we appreciate the DOT and Department of Revenue trying to explain this to us. But it looks like that we would have the highest charge in the country at about 3.47 cents per kilowatt hour. And as you may recall, we have the second highest annual fee for EVs in the country. So I forgot to commend Governor Kemp on his initiative, e-mobility. I think we're looking at $23 billion in investment and 28,000 jobs. So we're a little concerned that Georgia would have the highest fee charging per kilowatt hour and the second highest annual fee for EVs. We think we ought to be incentivizing EVs. But as we heard during the study committee, the head of GM's electrification department and other people said is the motor fuel tax, the trouble now is all these higher efficiency cars, internal combustion engines. Now EVs are going to be a problem one day, but not right now. So we think 2025 is way too soon to implement a new tax. And we got the GDOT big pilot study committee on road use charge, and we'll have some facts from that in a year or two. And I think we have some other unintended consequences. All these, they call them non-network chargers or destination chargers, as we talked about in house technology. They cost, I understand, about 1/3 of what the network chargers cost to install. So if people have to spend all that money to charge, we think a lot of them will get shut down. So we think we might lose a bunch of chargers. So anyway, for all those reasons, we would ask that you remove this new tax until we have more facts, or at the very least do what ChargePoint suggested and delay it to 2028. Thanks, sir.
I do note that it doesn't kick in until January of '25, which gives us 2 years to review and analyze it if this passes. And of course, I'm receptive to any amendment to reduce that tax rate. In the meantime, we always appreciate your perspective and your thorough analysis. I'm going to recognize the majority leader for question or comment.
Mostly a comment. Thank you, Mr. Woodall, for being here again today. I want to make sure the committee understands that what we're doing in the conversion of this from gasoline to kilowatt per hour is the equivalent of the current gas tax. We're not marking it up higher than what we're already paying. So it's important to know we're not trying to increase the cost on an electric car more than the gasoline or diesel engines. It's exactly the same based on the conversion of the energy. Furthermore, it's important we get this in place today because the $135 million federal grant that's coming through GDOT this year for the RFP for these contractors to deploy these charging stations, they need to know what the technology has to be retrofitted for. So it's good to know that there's going to be a meter on them. There's going to be a charge for these public stations to be able to collect the tax and submit it to the state. So we need to get this in place now. There could be changes in the future. If we see we've missed something, we'll tweak it when the time comes. Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Woodall from committee members? All right. Thank you so much for being with us. Mr. Doug Teeper. Georgia Conservation Voters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm going to be very brief. I want to thank all the members of the study committee and all the members who are here today. This has been a big project, looking at how we're doing the transition from gasoline or internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. I'll cut off the rest of my comments by saying I'm with our governor, Kemp, who's trying to promote Georgia as the electric vehicle capital of the country. I want to make sure we don't kill the baby in the crib by putting too much taxes on the motor fuel. Transition to electricity. I know we need to maintain our roads and our bridges, and I'm all for that. I drive down DeKalb Avenue, and believe me, it needs something there. But I do want to say that on line 337, the 9 kilowatt hour, I am concerned that we don't want to be known as the state that taxes the most. I also, Leader Googe, I appreciate your comments about us having to definitely tax on that, but electric vehicle folks are also paying the extra $217 a year as well. So I'll stop there. I just want to thank you all for your work on this, and we're very encouraged by the state of Georgia engaging in this process and being ready for it, but we just want to make sure, my organization is called Georgia Conservation Voters. I sometimes feel like we're Georgia conservative voters as well, so we don't want to tax too much.
Okay.
Thank you.
We don't have any questions. You charmed us all there. Thank you. All right. What is the pleasure of the committee? This will be on the committee substitute to HB 406, LC 393918S. Got a motion due pass from Senator Ginn and a second from Majority Leader Gooch. Any discussion or further proposed amendments?
I'm checking the math, you're good.
One question, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Hey, you good on this high tax rate too there, Senator Ginn?
One question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Summers.
Mr. Chairman, maybe a question for Senator Gooch, Majority Leader. Could you, on 337, where everybody seems to be concerned about the kilowatt hours, could we have something in there that kind of said we would take the average of 3 states or something that kind of get us where we stay on the same level?
I think that is determined by the Department of Revenue.
It will be determined all the way?
Yes, that's why it's written the way it is. So they will have the authority to regulate that throughout the year, and that's why there's a not more than clause in the bill.
All right.
I'm good.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any proposed amendments? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you, Chairman Jaspers. I'm going to let Senator Gooch carry this for you, whether he wants to or not. All right.
I'll try not to let you down. Chairman.
Okay, last bill on our agenda today is House Bill 458, Representative Perkle. This concerns hemp farming provisions. We have seen it before in the Senate on the floor and didn't make it across the finish line. We felt like it may need a little work, and we'll see what we can do here with the House version. If you'll just take that podium, fine, or if you're more comfortable in the middle witness chair, either way, Representative. You can, absolutely. Sit right there in the middle, and I'll light you up.
Any house germs on you, I promise you.
Okay. We do not have a committee sub to your bill. We're working off your original bill as passed the House.
Well, thank you kindly.
And, of course, we reserve the right, if we learn things through committee process as we vet this to make tweaks and changes, and anything you might recommend is we'd be happy to hear. I'll talk with you. We need a lot of educating on this. If you'll just tell us the purpose of your bill and what it does, and we may ask you a few questions, and I have. It looks like probably 10, 12 people signed up that would like to be heard. Just to give the little roadmap to the audience where we're going, we're going to hear this today as thoroughly as possible. Do not intend to take action on it. It's 4:42 right now. We are scheduled to meet till 5, but I am certainly willing to go longer, 5:30 or maybe even long as to hear as many people as I can. We will also have this on the agenda on our Tuesday meeting, which is at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, same place here. So if you don't get heard today, don't storm out in a huff, because you'll have another shot. If we don't reach you, we'll hear you on Tuesday before we take action. Okay? All right, the floor is yours there, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 458, LC 510363S is the LC number that I'm working off of. There was we just had revival at church the other day. The pastor got up to speak, and he said, "There's nobody more unworthy to speak and bring the gospel tonight than me." And I feel kind of like that here, because I was one of 3 no votes on the inaugural hemp bill that we're operating under now in the House. My good friend, one of the closest friends I have in the House, John Corbett, carried the bill, and I voted no. But so you might ask, well, why in the world are you carrying this one now? Our hemp in the state of Georgia right now is a hot mess. What we're looking at is problematic. The Journal of American Medical Association showed last year that they did a study, found 76% of the CBD products they tested were inaccurately labeled. 76%. This is what is consumers in the state of Georgia are using. We have no idea what's in the products now. We have no idea where it's coming from or who's selling. So my intention here, there will be people speaking probably after me that will be in favor of this bill. Some think it should go further than what this bill does, and some might have concerns where this bill is. My intention of the bill is to put guardrail in place in an industry that we currently have in the state of Georgia that desperately needs it. Currently, a 10-year-old child can walk into a store and buy 100 milligram THC gummy, and it is completely legal. This should change. Currently, right now, we can do it.
Y'all have your chance to speak. If you've signed up, let's be respectful to anybody speaking.
I want firm guardrails in place. This legislation puts those in place. It has the potential to help farmers. It has the potential to help retailers, and it has the potential to help processors. It will absolutely help consumers. I'm going to walk through this bill in a 30,000-foot view. I'm going to walk through both sections, but the chairman says when you walk through it quickly. Section 1 creates the language for a full panel certificate of analysis by an independent and accredited laboratory. Lines 33 and 34 specifically addresses that THC levels must not be more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis. It does not include the language. That's what the federal language is currently. I used specifically the 0.3% rather than the federal level. If the feds adjust upwardly that level, we would need to address that. Someone here in the legislature should address that later. I included tolerances in the bill to ensure that these standards would not be extended automatically. The balance of Section 1, and this is kind of important, that it provides definitions and maximum tolerances of pesticides and heavy metals, residual solvents, impurities that should be in the product. Sections 2, 3, and 4 address licensing requirements. Hemp growers will pay $50 an acre as it is now, with a maximum license fee of $1,000. Processor permits $5,000 annually. They will includes background checks that will be streamlined for growers and processors. Section 5 is new language. Retailers and wholesalers of hemp-derived products will be required to purchase a license issued by the Department of Ag. $250 annually for retail stores, $1,500 for wholesale stores. This is to create a registry, of all retailers who sell the product. Now, Section 6 is the meat of the bill for me. This is the truth and labeling portion of the bill. All consumable hemp products sold or distributed in Georgia must have a QR code on the packaging that shows a passing result of a full panel certificate of analysis. It shall be done by an independent laboratory. It also limits the THC per serving. The language will get rid of most of the unsafe and mislabeled products that are on the market. That's what Section 6 will do. That is that truth and labeling requirement. 7 and 8 allows the Department of Ag to create rules and regs to be in compliance with federal law. And Section 9 provides language to prevent the purchase of consumable hemp products by anyone under the age of 21. That is the overview of the bill. There again, there will be some here that probably want to expand. And I'm really not that guy. As I talked to the chairman today, I'm kind of like those of you that are older on the panel will recognize the reference perhaps, but I'm kind of like the church lady on Saturday Night Live. I'm a pretty straight air, and I just want guardrails in place for this bill. The genesis of the bill is the industry needs guardrails right now in the state of Georgia. So is this a perfect bill? I don't know. Probably not. But does it make it better in the state of Georgia were this to pass than what we have now? I absolutely think so. So that's the bill.
What was the vote in the House, do you recall?
There was one no vote, two vote. It was 169 to 2.
Okay. Committee members have questions?
169 to 2. Oh, I'm sorry. No, ma'am. 169 to 2.
Senator Lucas, you're recognized for a question.
What is the federal law on the THC?
It's 0.3% on a dry weight basis.
Oh, dry weight. Now, aren't the feds looking at doing something to redo the rules on it?
Senator, thank you for the question, but I've quit counting on feds to do something that they say they might do because it inevitably drags out a long time. So I can't answer that question accurately.
You got to forgive me for some of these just basic questions, but it's kind of new to me.
Yes, sir.
That 0.3% is for the raw product in the field, basically.
0.3%, and I have phone a friend here. I have Russ Bryant here that is exceedingly knowledgeable in this area. And I wouldn't mind for him to speak to that. But
he signed up. We'll get to him
Okay,
today,
good deal.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Because I wondered, is anybody, or are there any federal rules as to the consumable products, the gummies and the things that are being sold, what their percentage concentration of THC is?
It is still 0.3% on a dry weight basis.
Even on any product made out of the hemp?
That's correct. And it can apply also. So for the farmers, and I talked to several farmers a couple of weeks ago. I happen to be a farmer, but not of hemp. And there is a way to remediate a hot field. So if it tests more concentrate on the THC, which is the psychedelic part of the thing that makes you high on this product, if it tests hot, there is a way that you can remediate that down to a below the 0.3% level. However, federal law requires that once it's 0.3 or higher, that it's marijuana and it has to be destroyed. And there's nothing in this bill that that will allow us to go something beyond that.
All right. Other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to let some folks from the public speak here, and let's find out their thoughts. Is it Roshman Bush? I'm only going by your own handwriting best I can. Rashawn? Okay, I'm sorry. Lilu Farms. Lilu. Yes, correct. Okay. If you would introduce yourself to us, tell us who you're with and what your views are on this bill.
I will. My name's Rashawn Bush. I live in Rincon, Georgia. I'm a partner of a company that was originally one of the 6 hemp processors in the state of Georgia. We no longer process in the state of Georgia, however, but we still farm. We have production facilities and as well as retail stores. Currently, I have 11 retail stores in the state of Georgia. 2 weeks from now, I have an FDD dropping for franchising. 26 stores are on hold right now to go into Georgia because they're not sure how Georgia's going to go with the hemp rules. I can give insight or answer questions for you guys that have to do with the farming side, the extraction side, as well as the retail side. The bill as a whole, I have 0 problems with it being presented as guidelines. However, changing the federal meaning, as far as the THC Delta 9, 0.3%, to including all the isomers and polymers, I don't agree with. But accepting the federal rule on destroying a hemp crop that can save a farmer, it's like taking pieces of the rule and applying it. If the crop can be saved on the farmer side, why can't we implement that even if it's, sideways of the federal laws? Save the crop if you're going to implement the entire rule the way you want to do, because that's going to put the farmers in a tight situation. If you take away the THCA, HHCs, everything else that goes along with it, and the isomers and polymers, follow the federal meaning 100%. That's all I'm requesting. I got 2 issues with the bill. Everything in the bill that's guidelines that he's set forth, I'm pretty sure everybody that's in here in the retail side goes by those guidelines already. If they don't, that's the sketchy stores that you want to get rid of. Those are the sketchy stores I don't want to compete against. Every single one of my products currently, third-party lab approved testing, federal level. All under federal law, less than 0.3% in weight for Delta 9 THC. All of them have QR codes on them.
Right there. I have not until now heard about federal testing of these hemp products. What is the agency doing the testing?
SJ Labs does my testing.
All right, but what's the federal agency? They're contracted out.
So their process has to be approved by the government, by the federal government. So there's chemists that sit in a lab. They have to sit there and test these products, and they have SOPs, which are written by the federal government that they have to follow in order to determine what's what.
Are you required to go through some type of federal testing to sell your products in your retail stores?
I'm not, but I pay the extra to do it.
Okay, and so all the products that you sell at the retail level have already been tested by SJ Labs or somebody comparable?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and why do you do that?
Because I'm aware of the issues that he's presenting for. But the way he's going, not the way you're technically going about, I'm just speaking about the bill. The bill, it narrows it down so difficult to operate and continue to operate on a business that's been thriving in the state of Georgia. It's going to be detrimental to retailers to pass this bill the way that it's written. I'm not a user. I've never done a drug. I've never smoked a cigarette. But I can tell you every day, my mom was a school teacher for 17 years. COVID happened. They really didn't care about how the teachers were being treated in schools. I opened her a store. She now runs her own store. She can tell you, she's here, she can tell you, Every week, there's somebody that comes in and thanks us for having the products we have. And the ones that are thanking us aren't thanking us on anything around 10, 25 milligrams. These are people who have mental issues, addiction, who need higher milligram dosage. In making a cap on the milligram, you're creating a situation for those people not to be able to afford to have an answer legally. They're gonna go to the street dealers, which right now, street dealers around my stores, they come into my stores to try to see what we got going on. Everything I do is within the law, the federal meaning. There are 0 issues that I've ever had with children being 10. Now, you are correct. I heard a bunch of no's saying, no, a 10-year-old can't come in the store. No, they may not be able to come in your store. They can't come in my store and purchase, but they legally can. I'm all for the 21 and up. You look at any of my stores, I'll give you all the addresses. Take a picture of it, look at it on Google right now. You'll see only over 21 allowed to come in. It's on my doors.
Why is that? Is this dangerous to children?
It's not dangerous to children. It's dangerous to be unsupervised. I have people, so I have a lady, I own liquor stores as well. I do drink, but I don't.
You ain't the church lady.
No, I'm not the church lady. So I do own liquor stores, and one of my liquor reps, her son is 6 and was hit by a car in front of her house when he was 4. He has a ton of seizures. She came to my store, was telling me about the seizures, had to leave. I said, try some CBD. High milligram dose. Started giving her son around 300 milligrams a day. He's now having 1 to 2 seizures a month. Wow. So there's all these stories that we hear at the forefront of the retail side that you all have no idea about. And you'll read a study. Studies are great. Studies are not 100% applicable. You look at all the products that you mentioned that were purchased in the state of Georgia. How many was it?
This was not just the state of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
JMA had it, 150 products.
Okay, you take the 150 products. Were they purchased from actual stores and storefronts? Were they purchased from gas stations? Were they purchased from CBD stores that act as dispensaries, which follow all the rules that aren't even written yet? Were these studies done? What type of lab? What was it a product already grown and extracted and made in Georgia, like mine? It's so many out there, so many from overseas. There's so many things. And a lot of these packagings where they can go and purchase things, retailers will tell you, those packagings you can buy on Amazon and seal them at home with an iron.
Do you test the products in your store that are made overseas or out of state, or do you sell anything that's not a Georgia product?
No, I sell things that aren't Georgia products, but I don't sell anything that doesn't come to me with the COA. I don't sell anything that's made overseas. I sell what's made in North Carolina, California, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. And when I get a product and it has a COA, I already know enough to look to see if it's a funky looking COA. And if
COA stand for? I'm sorry.
Certificate of Authenticity.
Okay.
So you can do full panels, which I run. Certificate of Analysis, correct. So okay. I run full panels. If I buy something, let's say you own a company, you call me and say, hey, I want you to carry my product. Okay, send me a sample, send me your COA. I get your COA. As soon as I get your sample, it sits in my office. I take your COA, I go over it. I take your sample, I mail it out to be tested. Those COAs better match for me to sell it. It costs me money to do it, but it also keeps me out of y'all's hair and out of the legal realm. We're all okay with that. We already mostly do that, the retailers that are policing themselves. Because 5 years ago, when I started this, I knew policing would come. So why not already enact as a law would probably be written? That's what I've done. That's why I'm all for the bill, except for those 2 sections, because the lower milligram is not going to help your vets that have PTSD. Who wants a whole bunch of vets up here protesting against this bill once it passes and making issues? And I'm going to tell you this, I know this from firsthand. I have a partner store in downtown Savannah. Purple Heart recipient on 17 pills, came into my store in Port Wentworth, purchased our edibles, tried them, came back and said, what can I do to have one of these stores? I'm off of all my medication in 1 month. 1 month. He's not able to be here because he's going through a divorce, some personal things, but his life and quality of life, 10 times better than what it was on pills.
Do all your products have Delta 8 or Delta 9 in them?
No.
Do any of them have either of those ingredients?
Yeah, I got Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 11, every single one. I got CBD, I got THC-free products for people who get tested at their jobs. I make every single product be able to be useful across the line. And Delta 8 and Delta 9, understand, there's not a good one and a bad one. They have different effects on people. That's why I've isolated all of them, and I use them by themselves.
Have you had any of your customers come back with adverse effects or complaints or problems, overdosing, anything like that?
No.
Okay. I'm going to cut you off here for a minute because we're going to be short. I'm going to allow a few questions for you.
Okay.
And then I'm going to encourage you to please come back on Tuesday afternoon as well.
I'll be here.
You are apparently vertically integrated. You've
I am.
got a grower's license, a processor's license, and you retail
Yes.
stores, which at this point do not require any licensing, right?
The retail stores?
Yeah.
No, they don't, but I'm fine with it.
You're willing to pay $5,000 a store?
I think it should be a 7% tax on wholesalers. That's what I think.
Any committee members have questions?
$2 billion, 7%.
All right. I'm going to recommend recognize Senator Brass first.
All right, I just want to make sure I'm clear on, you said your two concerns about the underlying bill.
Mm-hmm.
So is the cap, is that the 25 milligram per individual dose and 500 milligram per individual package?
Correct. It's 52 to 56.
So lines 265
265 to 267.
through 267. Okay, so you do have a copy of the bill? Okay.
I do.
Okay, perfect. So that's one concern. So you're saying there shouldn't be a cap at all? Or
I'm saying that
should it be higher? Or
I'm saying
is there a federal cap?
No, there isn't.
Okay. All right.
Only on the amount of THC per dry weight, per unit, like per piece, if it was an edible or a smokable.
Okay.
So
and then,
the package cap of 500 milligrams, fine, but not the piece.
Okay, so that's okay.
The piece where it says 25 milligrams capped, that's going to affect people purchasing it so much.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from there, because if you
need 150 milligrams to function and you're forcing them to buy a lot of 25 milligrams, that's costing our production costs to go up and the cost to get the aid to the consumer.
Your packaging goes up too.
Yes.
All right, I got you. And then you're saying that .3, you were saying we're following federal law throughout this bill except for that piece.
Correct. Because you're including all the isomers and polymers as well as anything outside of Delta 9. THC Delta 9 is what should be measured following the federal law.
And that was done on lines 261, the .3?
It was done
Is there
on
anywhere else?
52 to 56.
52, 56.
If there's anywhere else, anybody can let me know. It should only state Delta 9, THC Delta 9. All the polymers and isomers that go along with that are not mentioned in the federal law.
Okay. No question. I just want to make sure I was straight. Thank you.
So part of what we're hearing and what's generating this public outcry is that federal law has loopholes. And one of those is Delta 8 that may have same effects or even maybe worse or whatnot. So that, I think, is why this bill was trying to identify isomers and et cetera, polymers and things that might make other components like a Delta 6 through Delta 10 or whatever have the same effect as Delta 9, which was addressed by the federal law. How can we get to that? How can we close that loophole other than identifying these isomers, et cetera, and testing for them?
Will I call it a loophole? Yeah, I'll agree with you as a loophole. But Delta 9 in its strength and in the quantity that it's grown in a marijuana plant is more effective, folds times stronger than Delta 8. You take Delta 9, look at 25 milligrams of Delta 9, look at 25 milligrams of Delta 8. You have a heavy consumer who uses both of those. 25 milligrams of Delta 9 is going to go 2 times as longer and stronger as Delta 8. Delta 8 is a cure for those people who need that longer and stronger, but they have to get it a couple more times already. It's already like that.
All right, Senator Summers, you got recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you doing the testing. I like that. That's very, you're I think you're way ahead of most of them. Where are you say you had Georgia-grown products. Where are they coming from in Georgia? And is the company that you're buying from testing them?
Which one?
I'm assuming
the
you're buying
plants?
oils.
Oil, yeah. We get oil and plants, so what we do is we get a percentage of the farms that sign up with us to process with.
Are you, excuse me, Mr. Chair, follow up?
Go right ahead.
Are you processing those oils? You have the equipment to process those oils, or are you buying the oils?
No, we have the equipment to process it in North Carolina.
You're extracting the oils, and you're bringing them into Georgia.
I test them and bring them into Georgia, yes.
So we're trying to create a Georgia-grown, quote,
And
CB world.
that'll never happen, and it sinks pretty for the one processor that's left in the state of Georgia. That makes no sense for any of the retailers. None of the farmers in Georgia are going to be able to support the money that's already being made in this industry. And to move hemp across state lines is completely legal. Move marijuana across state lines is not legal. So we grow hemp.
Identified as hemp.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't deal with marijuana, but it can't go across. So ours is extracted, North Carolina. Our COAs are all done in SJ Labs in Georgia, and all of our products for our stores come straight from this state as much as I can use. But you do that, you don't have enough farmer support because there wasn't none in the beginning for the processors. Georgia did it backwards. So when I went and got a processor license for $25,000, there was nobody to process. So it's like survival of the fittest, right? Right across the state lines in South Carolina, $5,000 for the same license. Go up north to North Carolina, $1,000 for the same license, and it could be in your backyard. There's differences. So once Georgia made it difficult for the processors, now the processors are like, why should I renew this license? Then they increased it to $50,000 for renewal. For what?
So why are there no growers in Georgia? I thought we had 140 licensed or something.
No, you may have 140 licenses. Check to see how much pounds they're growing.
So why couldn't you get enough business to survive as a processor here in Georgia?
Because the amount that we use in the state of Georgia, Georgia can't grow and you can't process it fast enough. There's a process to processing. So if I spend $3 million of my own money and I set up the top-notch, top-tier processing that I would choose to use, which would be solventless, which is what I currently use as solventless. So there's no solvents in my products, no heavy metals, none of that. So I use that $3 million, I'll be able to probably push through around in a day, running 24 hours on a push-button system on a $3 million system. I'm probably going to be able to do 50,000 pounds. 50,000 pounds in Georgia-grown light is going to give you oil that is subpar to California, Florida, anywhere, unless they grow indoor. Once they grow indoor, that's a smokable flower. Nobody's going to want to extract that. It costs too much, so you got to sell it up here, not down here. Georgia outdoor and grown flower is not that great.
Okay.
It's not that great for processing. It's not that great for smokable. It's not that great for consuming. Because once you get an oil, it's not just the oil. You have to look at your percentages of all those THCs and all those CBDs and CBGs that you see in there. Not happening from our light.
Last follow-up.
Senator Summers, last question.
You're okay with the testing, obviously, I'm making sure.
Yeah, of course,
And
100%.
So these products that we don't know where they're coming from, China, Mexico, wherever, that would take care of that issue if we did the testing, don't you think?
Yeah, if you required it and if you followed up and policed on it, of course. But that's not going to stop China and everybody else and wholesalers from bringing it in and people in stores purchasing it that don't know.
So what you said is we crippled the Georgia people to do this by allowing other people from other states just to bring it in freely.
Well, yeah, you do. It's no way to police it. And even if it comes in, wholesalers get it, then the wholesalers push it out. So the first issue is gas stations. That's what everybody's gonna say. Gas stations, right? Go into gas stations, see what they have, ask them questions. They're not answering the same things that we're able to answer or guide the customer along the way, and it's not an experience. It's not a learning experience. So I can get where that bill could be helpful. I understand it. I agree with it. Because all in the end, you got to look at the consumer. I had no intent on making this a franchise. I had no intent on having 11 stores. I had no intent on telling my mom she could quit working. No intent, zero. I initially started this because I enjoyed the research that I did and learned about the health benefits of this plant. That's where it came from. I don't even use it. I can grow it. I know how to grow it. I know how to process it. I know how to make it into products and write formulation calculators to make products that help people. I get people that come into the stores and say, hey, I buy this gummy of this THC and I buy this gummy of this CBG. This is how many I'm taking. What are you taking it for? Oh, I get the shakes. I got ALS or, yeah, and it helps me with my shakes. Okay, give me 1 week. I'll formulate you just a gummy and I'll put it in all my stores and let people know this helped you with that. Now I got 60, 70 different combinations of gummies that help people that sell. And they're all more than 25 milligrams.
One more question.
Last question.
So you extract the cannabinoids yourself and change the gummies?
And make them into gummies, yes. I have a chemist that does it.
Cannabinoids out of the oil and make them into gummies?
Correct.
Impressive.
Now, again, with that same process, you take Georgia oil, take California oil. I can make more gummies with the California oil, even though they're both a liter, than what I can with the Georgia, because I stay consistent on my product. So the percentages of the THC have to be the same, not the amount of the distillate.
Gotcha.
Senator, again, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you repeat your name for me?
Rashawn Bush.
Mr. Bush, that was the only question I had, but I want to compliment you. I know nothing about this subject.
I can answer all of them.
You truly sound like an expert, and I want to thank you for coming and testifying.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, and we hope to see you back on Tuesday morning.
Thank you. I'll be forward to looking, see all of y'all. It's my first time speaking in front of everybody. I'm a little nervous, but
you did great.
I did all right. Thank you.
4 in the afternoon. I'm sorry. All right. Kind of thinking we might need to have a little maybe lighten this up just a bit. And so, Aviva, the puppet woman, if you would can you do your show from the podium? Doc, you don't have to pass those around. I'll put them in folders if we need to. Go ahead and tell us your thoughts in an entertaining way, please, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
You're right in between the for and against on your how you signed up, so that's why I'm picking you to sort of see what you got.
Thank you so much for having us. We have a gig in Alabama on Tuesday, so we're so happy to be able to speak with all of you today.
Tell us who we is.
Oh, me and my ukulele. Scribbles is probably not going to make that one. Why not? Well, we'll talk about it later. Okay. So my name is Aviva Vuvuzela. I'm the founder of the Georgia Hemp Economic Revival Organization that's been around for 10 plus years, educating as many people as we can about some of what our previous amazing speaker said. And we also send emails inviting as many people as we can to hearings like this with all of you amazing legislators. So get to the point, Mom. Okay. So my point today is that, well, let me just talk. Okay. I think that you all don't know the difference between hemp seeds and CBD. Scribbles. Well, what I'm trying to say is hemp food is grass. I think it's pronounced grass. Generally recognized as safe. And in 2018, there was a really big federal push for Americans to grow hemp food. Why is that? Well, we get it all from Canada and maybe a little bit of China. That's $700 million a year of imports. Wow, that's a lot. So how much do you think Georgia spends on that? I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it would help the Georgia economy if we grew some hemp food here. That's a really good point. And I think these legislators are just scared that it's the same thing as cannabinoid extractions. You might be right. Has anyone here tried hemp seeds or hemp food? Do you think it'll make you high? Because it doesn't. Do you guys eat bagels? Do you ever have poppy seed bagels? Well, those are from the opium plant, but you don't have a problem with that. Why wouldn't you have a hemp seed bagel? That's a really good point. Plus, my favorite food is broccoli. That has a dietary cannabinoid, beta-caryophyllene. Wow, that was impressive, Scribbles. That's true. And the processing fee for broccoli is not $5,000 in this state. That's a really good point. So do you think the processing fee is limiting farmers from growing hemp for food? Because I think food is about $100 to $300 to license here. So we think it would be a really good idea to just categorize a different license for hemp food, because malnutrition is very unsafe, and hemp food has so much nutrition in it. And we think that it would, don't forget to tell them oranges are being processed for CBD too, and also breast milk has endocannabinoids. Scribbles. Let's keep this, well, it is true. We have an endocannabinoid system, and there are 2 cannabinoids that we make when we're nursing babies, and they actually help babies to be stimulated to actually suck the breast. And without those cannabinoids that we make, then that wouldn't happen. And I might have to overdub some of your thoughts with that. But anyway, I think that everyone knows what we're talking about now, but we have a handout, and that has education. And we think they're, not to insult anyone, but Georgia has been a little backwards. So we think, why not take a step back and just create Cannabis Education Day and just educate people about everything, because that'll help us legislate. So if you are looking at the handout, you see our proposed Cannabis Education Day, whereas George Washington did not chop down a cherry tree, it was cherry cannabis, whereas food is nutritious. It has magnesium, manganese, potassium, omegas, reduces cholesterol, all kinds of things on that fact sheet. We feel like we would like other people to talk, so we will bring this to a close. We thank you so much for letting us talk so long. We know that was more than 2 minutes, and that was amazing. And if you have any questions?
Well, I think the Rules Chairman, Senator Brass, has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'll allow, I've got a question for Mr. Scribbles.
That would be just fine.
Mr. Scribbles, I've never had that attention before.
Well, I'm just curious, Mr. Scribbles. Are you a unicorn? Is that a horn? What's going on there?
Are you a unicorn?
No, is that the thing on the middle of the head? What is that?
I get a lot of knowledge. It's not like cannabis that DNA turns to the left or anything. It's just a little bit, it needs sewing. But it connects me to my planet. It's my antenna. And it's children do think I'm a unicorn hybrid of some sort, but I'm just kind of like a fragile, like, puppet thing.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Last question. There's other speakers in addition to Mr. Scribbles that would like to be heard.
All right.
Go right ahead.
Oh, well, just Mr. Scribbles, where exactly are you from?
What
planet? Start there.
I'm not home. I want to go home. It's okay. It's
Well,
kind
thank
of
you for being here, Mr.
a touchy subject.
Okay.
Thank
He
you for
was
being
kind
with
of
us.
abandoned.
All right,
Thank you.
Lisa Gano.
Thank you.
Vape Right.
I was curious.
I know. Hi, I'm Lisa Gano with Vaporite, and I feel kind of nervous here following Rashawn because I'm not as knowledgeable as him or as entertaining as Mr. Scribbles. But we've been in the business, we've had retail stores since 2011, and as Rashawn said, it's always been once we had age of 21 for anything, that's what people had to be 21 to even come in. So a lot of these things we are in total agreement with the age, with testing. It is all ready to where before anything comes into our stores, do they have third-party testing? We want full panel testing. We want to have that QR code. That must be on anything that comes into our stores for us to sell. One of the things that I'm concerned about is with the portion, with the 25 milligram and the total of 500 in the package. If we do that, of the total SKUs I have in my stores right now, 65% of them would have to be removed. And of that 65%, 57 of those are currently taxed on the vapor tax. So all of those would have to be gone as well. That's my biggest concern of how much that would be missing from my stores. Everything else, I completely understand the framework on this, and I think we do need to do something because you do have bad players in the game, and those people who don't want to abide by these things do need to go. I'm short and quick. Is there? That's all I have.
Any questions? Senator Brass, you're recognized.
So you said 67% roughly would have to come out of your store?
65% of my current SKUs that I have today.
Is that because of the 25 milligram or because of the 500 milligram?
Both.
Or both?
Both.
Okay. All right, that's it.
What type of time period would you need to exhaust that supply without just throwing it out? I mean, if we can change the effective date of this or schedule it so that you would have time to sell that in the normal course of business.
I'm usually I order things like on a 3-month time period. So, but I usually have some left over. I'm not out. So over 3 months, so 3 to 6 months, I would say.
All right.
To make sure.
Thank you. Chairman Summers, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Nobody seems to want to do the 25 milligrams because obviously, is it not enough for people? Tell me where we're missing on this 25 milligram.
On some things, and some things don't come that way. It's like a cream. I have a cream in my store that would have to be taken out because it is over the 500 on the total. There's not a per serving on that. The per serving would be on like the gummies or the edibles. That is not going to take it. That has nothing to do when it's a cart or a disposable that's being vaped. So those are pretty much all of those would be gone.
Wow. It's crazy.
And I mean, yeah, it affects a lot of things. And that's why all of the disposables, all of the carts, those would all be gone and the excise tax would be lost on all of those.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Call up. If we limit it to 25, are you telling me that possibly if people need a lot more milligrams, they're just going to take a bunch more gummies and then have to pay a lot more? And
on some of those, yeah.
Is that where we're going here, guys? And you just pack it all in? So to get where they need to be, is that? Yeah.
On some of these people, yes.
So what would be a limitation? What would be a number?
Well, it comes in because some things aren't, that's only on the edibles. So you have those that some of them are larger than that. They could be 30, it could be 50 on those, on milligrams. But a lot of things that to me on the 500 milligram total, that's even a bigger issue because that excludes many other things that would have to be gone because there's not a per piece.
Can people overdose on these?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. No. You're a vape store. Do you have THC vape cartridges?
I do, yes.
And are those felonies? I'm seeing
No,
kids
sir,
in
nothing.
Athens vaping that are getting arrested for
There
felonies.
is nothing in my store that's going to exceed that 0.3%.
Okay, so that's why it's not.
Yeah.
All right.
There is nothing. I'm not going to have anything in my store that has that in there.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions. Appreciate you keeping it brief. It gives other people a chance to be heard. All right, got another sloppy handwriting. You have to come introduce yourself. HC Industries, LLC. Can't tell if you're Cody or Jelly or.
Sloppy handwriting, my apologies.
All right. Tell us who you are then, because I don't know. Can't read.
Yes, sir. My name's Cody Smith. I'm from Camden County, Georgia, and I'm a retailer. I'm a hemp retailer. I have it prepared because I do want to respect your time. I do want to go off a little bit and just say that I was one of those people that thought that you could not remediate hemp, but there is a USDA plan available online, and it's actually in the Georgia Department of Agriculture rules and regs. So even though it's not codified in law, it is in rules and regs. And now to my prepared statement. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank this committee for allowing me to speak today and working as hard as you do on the people's business. My name is Cody Smith, and I'm blessed to have called South Georgia home for the majority of my life. I'm a small family-owned hemp retailer with 3 stores located in St. Mary's, Brunswick, and Savannah, Georgia, and proud to serve markets that include FLETC, which is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, Hunter Army Airfield in Savannah, and Naval Submarine Base Kings Bay in St. Mary's, Georgia. We are exceptionally diligent in procuring and verifying only the safest, highest quality hemp products for our consumers, many of which are veterans and former law enforcement looking for an alternative to alcohol and prescription medication that can have undesirable and addictive side effects. I don't believe that any reputable retailer would sell hemp products to a minor, and it is also inaccurate that hemp is being imported from other countries like China and Mexico. I have over 7 years of experience in this industry and consider myself an expert on what I'm about to say next. Georgia's competition lies right here in America. States' hemp programs like that of Florida, Kentucky, and particularly our neighbor to the northwest, Tennessee, are eating our lunch. I know we can't fix Georgia's hemp industry here today, but I would implore you in the future to work on modeling our own program after that of Tennessee, where farmers stand to benefit the most. I know y'all are tired of revisiting hemp legislation time and time again, and suggest postponing this bill until next session to hear from all industry stakeholders and subject matter experts to get this right the first time before passing something that could cripple the retail market and subsequently the processors and, most importantly, the farmers. Getting language correct is one of the most important things this body is tasked with. These are the 3 biggest challenges of House Bill 458 that I've identified as causing the most harm to Georgia's hemp industry, and ask that this committee look into reconsidering and/or amending these provisions. I agree and welcome the provision related to having to be 21 or older to purchase hemp products, and agree that it should take effect immediately upon the signing of the governor. But I ask that all other provisions take effect January 1st, 2024, to allow retailers to transition into compliance without losing invested inventory, and find new vendors that meet this bill's new labeling requirements. Moving forward as it is currently written will have damaging legal implications for hundreds of Georgia's small business owners. The current milligram per dose limit would be detrimental to the industry and would effectively wipe 90% of current hemp products off the market. I believe the milligram limit should be based on a reasonable industry standard that the consumers are comfortable with and have come to expect. Tennessee has a similar bill to this one they are currently debating and have already removed the 500 milligram per product limit, allowing consumers to get more value from purchasing a larger quantity versus having to purchase multiple bags. Many states have enacted full panel COA testing requirements for hemp in the field pre-harvest, as well as the intermediary material used to make hemp products during the processing phase. Because those states ensure the hemp plant and intermediary material, which is the distillate from processing, meets full panel testing requirements, those states only require potency testing requirements for finished hemp products. A full panel test can cost $500 on the low end, where potency testing will only cost $80 to $100. An example what that would be, so imagine you have a whole field of hemp material, right? We're talking thousands of dollars of hemp. It's only going to cost $500 to get that full panel analysis. When it comes to the processor, they process all that hemp into like millions of dollars of distillate of that material that you process, and that's only going to be $500 to test that. When it gets to the retailer side of things or the manufacturing side of things, the product's already been tested safe in the field. It's been tested safe after it's been processed. So imagine a regular bag of Skittles. You don't have a certificate of analysis showing a full panel that it doesn't have heavy metals and solvents, because that's already been done before the hemp material has been added.
So these are tested before they're processed?
Ideally, yes, sir. So, and that's a requirement for most states. Now, it's not codified into law. It's not codified, whatever Matt Brass's favorite word is. Yeah. Codified, is that what it is? It's not codified into law, right? But I will say there are other states, for example, Colorado, states that have had these programs around a lot longer. It's a requirement that once you need potency testing only to get it out of the field, right? So they want to make sure it's below that 0.3 delta 9 THC threshold. So that's really the only requirement for getting it out of the field. They don't test for solvents and heavy metals. Once it gets to the processing side of things, before it can be brought into market, it does have to pass that full panel certificate of analysis. That is codified into law in some other states.
But not here yet. That's one reason.
But not here yet, yes, sir. Now, I think some of the language in the bill, right, it's asking that all hemp products have a full panel certificate of analysis. So that's after you've gotten the distillate from the processor. And now Susie B. Anthony is over here making hemp lotions and hemp things like that. Ideally, the product she got from the processor tested safe, met that full panel requirement. So to put a $563 burden on Susan B. Anthony to get one of her lotion, one batch of her lotions tested at $563, if she's only selling it for $20 a piece, she's going to have to sell 30 units just to break even on the lab testing cost. Where since it's already safe from the processor, she could spend anywhere between $80 to $100. And I do have a printout of like a price sheet from a lab, ACS Labs. It's not SG Labs. It's not SG Labs in Georgia. I did reach out to them. They didn't get back to me, but this is from Florida.
Is SG the only one we got in Georgia right now?
That is SJ. Yeah, sorry, I was having trouble there.
Macon?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
They are the only lab, and so I mean, if we're testing, let's say I have 20 SKUs, 20 different individual products, hemp products. That times 500 can add up exponentially. And if we're trying to keep it at a reasonable price point, $15 to $25 for an individual product, I think if it's already been tested safe from the processor, just requiring a potency test so that it meets those truth in labeling requirements, that a 25 milligram gummy is actually a 25 milligram gummy because it's the product used to make it has already been tested safe. So I would say to address that in this bill, if you were to move forward with it, is that, only hemp products from out of state could be from states that have those laws enacted, where the processor has to require that full panel testing before so that's the problem with a lot of these products now. You'll see where it only has potency. I'll reach out to a vendor in Tennessee, right? I'll only get the front page. It's the potency stuff. The processor has the full panel analysis. The person that manufacturer got the distillate from to make the products, they know it's safe before they ever put it into a gummy or into a lotion. So the only requirement there is a potency test versus a $500 full panel certificate of analysis, if that would make sense. And I can answer any questions as well if you'd like, if I'm unclear.
Any questions? Senator Brass, very inquisitive today.
Well, I'm just learning all about hemp today.
It's a fascinating product.
It is. So I've got a question on like your topical creams. How many milligrams are in a typical bottle? Or
so this is actually a great question, right? When it comes to topicals, you don't see a lot of Delta 8, or you don't see a lot of Delta products that are topicals. You'll see those are mostly CBD, and there's no limit on CBD products.
Okay, so we're not limiting that. We're only limiting. Okay.
Well, yeah, essentially. And
there's not a topical cream with Delta 8, Delta 9?
I'm not saying there are not. There probably are.
You sell it?
Right.
Oh, so there is.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I don't sell them in my store. I only sell, so there's like HHC, there's all these crazy cannabinoids, right? I only sell CBD and Delta 8 because that's what I feel safe selling, right? Once you get into the esters of the Delta 9 THC, that's where you get into the synthetic cannabinoids, and I don't feel comfortable selling those in my store.
Okay.
And that's addressed in this bill. I agree with that as far as hemp products. I'm glad that they removed the provision for isomers of Delta 9 because that pertained to Delta 8. But so I guess there are Delta 8 products and topicals. I mean, a dose would be whatever you consider.
Well, I'm not worried about the dose. I'm worried about the package. I don't know how you'd limit the dose of a topical
so in my
cream.
experience,
I mean, I've had CBD lotion I've used on my back, and it essentially feels like icy hot, but
like the roll-on.
But
yes,
I don't
sir.
know what's an icy hot, and I
Yeah,
know
of
what's in
course.
that. It comes from a plant, so I'm fine with it.
Of course. Well, there should be a QR code where you can see the certificate analysis for potency. That's pretty much industry standard. Even if it's not codified into law, that is industry standard that you're going to have accompanying certificate of analysis with the product. To answer your question, there really is no limit. I mean, a 1,500 milligram topical, you're applying it topically, so I mean, it's not really getting into your bloodstream. You're not going to notice any adverse effects. You just might feel a little bit more comfortable because it removes some of that inflammation.
Okay.
All right, got a question from Vice Chairman Summers.
So you like the bill except for what?
Great question. So the full panel certificate of analysis requirement for the finished product, for the finished product. If we can get a full panel certificate analysis at the processing stage, that's the oil, that's the distillate that you're using to make products. So, I mean, it stands to reason that should be safe before it ever goes to market. It leaves the processor. And that just saves the manufacturers $500 a pop every time they make a batch. If they get something from out of state, that their processors meet that requirement, right? And all they have to go on is a potency analysis. It tells you how many cannabinoids are in it. That it would save them from having to pop out $500-something for a full panel, because it met the requirements of that state that would have the same standards as Georgia.
Let's talk about that real quick. What other states do require a full panel analysis at the processor stage?
Yes, sir. So I did some research this morning, and I didn't write it down, but I know for a fact California does. I know for a fact Colorado does. Washington State does. And I believe Kentucky does.
So if you're selling products in your store
Yes,
that
sir.
are manufactured from states other than those, or somebody that requires that full panel, you can't guarantee its safeness.
So I purchase from a very limited number of states, right? So I have a vendor out of North Carolina, and they do have that requirement. I have a vendor out of Tennessee, and then we used to have a vendor out of Colorado. We don't use them anymore, but they meet that same requirement as well. Now the problem is that their end product, right, like the package of gummies or the bottle of lotion, it'll only have potency, right? But that's because we know they use safe product, because the product that they used to make that was verified safe and met all of those standards in the processing stage.
Okay. Very informative. Thank you. I'm going to have time for 2 more speakers.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And anybody else
women.
come back. I'm curious if, Mr. Chairman, if all this same group testified in the House, did you have as much testimony over there?
It was a full testimony time.
Okay, sounds good. All right, I'm going to hear, before we leave today, Sebastian Carlson, because you came all the way from Colorado. Yes, sir. You happen to be next on the list, so I'm going to get you. I also have Russ Bryant here. Looks like Chris Stapleton back there, and he's with the one, I think, about the only open processor in Georgia, so I want to get the insight from the processor. Greg Raduca, if I had time, I'd want to hear from you too, because I know your perspective on the danger sides of this, and I want a committee to hear it, but it may not be today. Since you're local, stand by for Tuesday. All right, Sebastian, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what
Chairman,
you do.
Senators. My name is Sebastian Carlson. I am the senior chemist of a hemp processing facility. I'm also the senior chemist of a functional mushroom extraction company dealing with reishi, lion's mane, cordyceps, those sorts. I also own my own extraction consultation business. I've been a research chemist for just under 10 years now, both in the university and now in the private sector. So I'll try to be quick. In my opinion, this bill is well intended. However, it's wildly inconsistent as it stands. I definitely agree that the regulation should be put into effect and that we should have a minimum age to purchase these products. It should definitely be 21 and up. No kids should be getting their hands on this stuff. So some issues that I have with this bill is specifically the language that's used to define a hemp product in lines 29 through 37. It only defines a hemp product as containing delta-9 THC or esters of delta-9 THC less than 0.3%. So by my interpretation of that language, there are hundreds of cannabinoids in hemp that wouldn't be regulated under this bill. And anybody that was making one of those, and many of those other cannabinoids are also psychoactive. So if anybody's making one of those, this bill doesn't apply to them. So that's a huge issue that I see. It also removes THCA from the definition, but later contradicts itself in line 45 and 46. It suddenly brings up THCA. Tetrahydrocannabinolic acid is not an ester of THC, so basically expecting THCA to be umbrella affected by the ester definition, it wouldn't. It's a carboxylic acid.
I got to stop you right now.
Yes.
This debate has been going on in Georgia for 5 years, and you are the first person that has ever told us that any of these cannabinoids were psychoactive other than THC. So that's commonly known in the field of marijuana chemistry?
So I don't deal with marijuana at all, actually. Specifically hemp, I mainly focus on minor cannabinoids, such as THCV and such. But that's beside the point.
So tell me how many of those other cannabinoids are psychoactive?
So there's a list of cannabinoid CB1 receptor agonists. That's the receptor in your brain that THC acts on. And there are, I think there are over 200 cannabinoids found in the plant, and I think there's more than 90 of them have been found to be psychoactive. And if we solely define hemp off of delta 9 THC content, then all of those psychoactive compounds aren't going to be regulated, from my interpretation at least. Moving along, I find that I definitely agree that there should be a standard set for testing these, especially for harmful contaminants, pesticides, heavy metals, etc. However, the testing limits brought up in this bill are quite seemingly arbitrary. Seems like they were pulled out of nowhere. They don't line up with FDA levels, and they don't line up with similar states, such as Florida and the North and South Carolina. Doesn't line up with those states. It seems like it kind of just grabbed it out of thin air. Furthermore, it bans exo-THC as being an ester of THC, but exo-THC is not an ester of THC. It is simply the 9/11 double bond position of THC. And I guess finally, I would just want to say that ultimately here, we all want to protect the consumers, but we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. There are multiple other states that are already doing this, and FDA even has guidelines for what they define hemp as. And if we just mirrored that a little bit more, it would be a lot better for the bill and for the consumers as well. It would help boost the industry rather than handicapping it entirely.
In Colorado, who does the testing? You're a processor there?
Yes, I am.
Is your product or your oil or whatever you're making out of that processing system get tested at your level or just at the
So I do have in-house analytics, so I test everything myself, and then I send it out for third-party analysis as well to make sure that my own internal methods are lined up. But we never sell anything without an internal and an external C of A.
Does the state of Colorado have its own testing labs where you have to submit to testing through their ag department?
They have ISO accredited labs, yes. We have a handful of them in Colorado.
So are you free to select whoever you want to submit you can contract with any lab you want, or the state?
I would only contract with a federally ISO certified lab.
Okay. Does the FDA ever come in and test hemp products?
No.
Do they have the ability
At least not
to?
in my experience.
Okay. How do they know whether it's 0.3% THC or not?
So that's the thing is I am an in-process producer. I don't sell products to end users. So ultimately, the seller of the product must test it legally, and then companies do get audited by governing agencies to occasionally come through and decide, oh, this isn't off. And any products anytime there is a discrepancy, there's a full audit and products are usually removed from the store shelves.
Sorry to interrupt you. Just had
Oh, no, you're fine.
lose my thought if I didn't.
But yeah, that's mainly my issues with this bill is just the wild inconsistencies and contradictions. I feel like this bill's coming from the right place. I do agree with what others have said previously by hampering, by making 25 milligrams the maximum dosage. That really only comes down to edibles, because if you look at any other product other than edibles, you're going to exceed those 25 milligram dosages. And so it basically takes smokables off the market and other vapor style ingestion methods.
Yes. I'm going to recognize Senator Robertson here, our whip, for a question.
I appreciate you coming down to enjoy the cool weather in Georgia, since y'all don't have enough in Colorado.
Oh, it was blizzarding right before I left.
Yeah. I love Denver, and I looked at the marijuana industry there in Denver very closely, visited a lot of places, and I'm curious, you said the seller must test the product. Are you talking about at the retail level?
Yeah, the retail level. So, to my knowledge, anyone that needs to sell a hemp product in the state of Colorado needs to have that thoroughly tested, full panel tested, and it's on them. It's on them to do that. But I also test it before we even send it to the final distributor, so that they can just retest it, verify that it matches, and we have a chain of custody that traces all of this material back.
If you don't mind, Mr. Chair, do you find that the majority of this testing at the retail level happens on the premises, or do they just contract this out?
It is always sent out for third-party analysis. Most retail labs do not have the instrumentation required to test these.
So on your chain of custody, would it come from the wholesaler to the test lab that the retailer has contracted with, be tested there, and then delivered to the retailer?
No, to my knowledge, it goes directly to them, and then before they can sell it, they have to get it tested, get like batch representative tests done on the product before it can be sold.
And what government agency audits that?
To my knowledge, the FDA.
Okay, so a federal agency comes in and audits then?
I honestly don't know who does the specific auditing of Colorado hemp businesses.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are retailers licensed in Colorado?
Not to my knowledge. I'm afraid I don't have enough knowledge on that subject. I mainly deal with the chemistry side of it. I'm not too savvy in the business dealings, mainly just what these compounds are and what they do.
Any other speakers knowledgeable about that? Keep me posted, or think about it on Tuesday. I'm interested to know if all states or any other states license at the retail level. I'm going to recognize Senator Lucas for a question. Are you getting edgy over there? All right. Okay, then.
It's interesting.
It is.
I learned a lot today.
That's an interesting.
I'm in the wrong business.
You'll learn a lot. It's not too late, and you'll learn a lot in this committee. Senator Summers.
This is crazy, kind of how picture what you're telling me, man. And I appreciate your smarts here. You make the product, you sell to retailers, wholesalers, what do you want to call it? If I understand correctly, two questions. Who has the best bill out there in the states you were talking about? Who has the best bill that does what we need to be doing?
I don't honestly have an answer for you there.
Okay, next question. If we don't do it, if we do it the way we're doing it, were you kind of trying to say that we'll create a black market that'll be unregulated, period, no matter what? Is that what you're trying to say?
There is definitely room for massive loopholes in this bill the way that it's currently written. And that would, it focuses too intensely on one thing, and I feel like it should loosen up on how specific it's being of the specific Delta-9 and esters of Delta-9, and realistically, it should just stay as the current language, which in the federal definition, it is currently listed as any part of the plant, including seeds thereof and all derivatives, extracts, cannabinoids, isomers, acids, salts, and salts of isomers with no more than 0.3% of THC.
Last follow-up.
Last
follow-up. Senator Lucas asked one question a while ago earlier to a presenter. If the federal law changes, what he asked the question, we've been waiting for years for it to change. Am I not correct in assuming there's much higher than 0.3% that they're talking about the change?
So federally, hemp is defined as cannabis sativa that has less than 0.3% Delta-9 naturally occurring. So it's no. Hemp legally, according to the federal government, can't have more than 0.3%.
Okay, fair enough.
So why does everybody think you shouldn't sell to people under 21? What's the danger? What's the harm?
I mean, that's like saying, should we give alcohol to kids? Probably not. Anything.
Alcohol gets you drunk. All
Yeah.
y'all keep saying this doesn't do anything to you.
Well, so there are many cannabinoids that don't give any intoxicating effects, but they do have some anti-inflammatory effects or other useful medical applications. However, there are a vast majority of the cannabinoids present in cannabis sativa plants that have psychoactive properties.
One last question for you, then we're going to.
You said vast majority percentage?
So like I said, we have over 200 cannabinoids identified, and I think about 90 of them are psychoactive.
So a little less than 50%.
Yeah. But the way the bill is written, it would be like focusing on about 5 to 8%.
That's right. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much for being with us and making
Happy
the
to be
journey
here.
from Colorado. Come
Thank
on
you very
back
much.
Tuesday if you'd like
Thanks
to.
for having me.
Okay. Russ Bryant, this is going to be our last speaker. It's about 10 till 6. We'll be out of here by 6. Is your wife calling? Yeah.
Good afternoon. I guess sitting through this, one thing that's clear to me is we definitely need a bill of some sort. We've talked in full circle here. We've talked about plant-derived cannabinoids. We've mentioned cannabinoids that are not plant-derived but are less than the federal level of Delta-9 THC. You know, I don't know that any bill's perfect anywhere where we are in this current state of the industry. But what I do think is that we're moving forward with something to try to get it right. You know, the total milligrams that's been talked on about this, you know, at the beginning of moving this bill, that was not there, and then it was asked to be put in there, and then we tried to take it out, and we've asked to be just 0.3% total THC. I think that where we're at on this bill, it just seems to me that we're pretty clear of what we can do on that. I think there's been some language change to the bill since I've actually read it in the last few weeks.
I don't think you've told us who you are and who you work for.
I'm sorry.
You have a license.
I'm Russ
Give us
Bryant.
some context.
I'm sorry, guys. My name is Russ Bryant. I'm with Second Century Ag out of Osceola, Georgia. I think we were the largest grower of hemp last year. We're a fully operational extraction company there in Osceola. Sorry to get ahead of myself.
That's
I'm just
okay.
sitting
You're
there.
talking about the bill. Did you draft this bill, or you and your partner?
No,
or
I've
is
just
there-
read and helped and kind of worked along with people with the bill of what they thought that should be in there, and just trying to get us some guidelines. You know, I've talked with a little bit of everyone, seems like, to try to get some guidelines somewhere.
And tell me why you feel like we need guidelines. The federal government's legalized hemp, anything that's hemp, which is below 0.3%, is the wild, wild west. Why do you think we need to regulate it? Is it dangerous to our citizens? Is it a competition deal? Is it dangerous to kids under 21? I need to know why we even need a bill.
Speaking on different cannabinoids, you know, is if you're talking danger to children, would I want to give a child 200 milligrams of Delta-8? Absolutely not. Would never recommend that. Would I want to give them 100? Absolutely not. Would I want to give a child of CBDA or CBDV that's having seizures 60 to 100 milligrams? Possibly. We've seen studies there that's worked. You know, it's where we're currently at. We have no regulations. So I don't think that we have many safety problems at all. The studies have been out there that it would take over 750 milligrams of psychoactive Delta-9 to cause problems, health problems. But I haven't, but I've heard of people taking way more than that. You know, they before have made 1,000 milligram gummies. You've seen stuff in stores that make claims to 1,000 milligrams or 500. The thing is, we're just trying, we would like to see some kind of regulation to where you know that's what they're taking. Whether it's my mother, my grandmother, my dad, myself, you know, I would like to know exactly what I'm putting in my body. The topicals, you know, I don't think the topicals were limited to 500 milligram was my understanding. Clay, you have the, because your body, you know, it works as a topical's a little different. Your body works as a protector when you're putting it on topically, and it goes through the pore to where it's not getting into the bloodstream. So you're not going to fail a drug test topically. It's like having a shield there. I have to take my glasses off to read. I guess I'm backwards from everybody else, but to see. So I guess it says any consumable hemp product shall have a maximum total concentration of, this is the Delta-9. There again, we're not addressing CBD, CBG, CBV, CBT, CBE, CBN. We're not addressing that. Those are non-psychoactive. We tried to address the psychoactive, I feel like, in this bill. So the topicals, I don't think, you know, there was a statement made earlier that their topicals would have to come off the shelf. I guess if that topical has more than 500 milligrams in it, it would have to come off the shelf. But I don't think that those topicals are going to have 500 milligrams at 2 ounces or 1 ounce or whatever it is. So I don't know that that will be coming off. I mean, I don't know who here makes a topical with more than 500 milligrams on a roll-on or an ointment or balm or anything.
I'm gonna recognize Senator Lucas for a question.
Let me, hold on, we're saying 500 milligrams of, I'm sorry. Okay, I guess I'm saying 500 milligrams of Delta-9 is what I'm asking. I don't think we're getting rid of, I don't think there's many of those out there.
Let me ask you,
Maybe I'm wrong. I
Senator
haven't seen
Lucas
them.
has a question.
You a grower?
Yes, sir.
All right. Can you reduce to the 0.3% on the hemp if the hemp you growing tests more than 0.3%?
I haven't had any of mine tests over the 0.3%.
So you don't know whether or not if you got a field and you over the percentage, is there any way outside of getting rid of the whole crop to reduce it to what the law is?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We can remediate that. We can remediate all the THC in-house at our processing facility.
Oh, okay. So you don't have to throw away the thing, but you can make it to where it's legal.
Correct. Then we have to dispose, by law, we would have to dispose of the THC by law, of the Delta-9 THC.
Like I'm going to THC business.
Got a question from Vice Chairman Summers.
Mr. Bryant, is the THC, or is a hemp and a marijuana plant the same thing, basically, except for time limit on growth?
There's some difference. They're both a cannabis plant.
So
hemp is considered a cannabis sativa ale.
You pick your hemp before, or you process your hemp before you would process the trichomes or whatever out of a marijuana plant?
Not necessarily, but for safe measures, you would probably want to harvest or test the hemp for harvest a little sooner.
Follow up? Yes. So if you had a field now, the way the law's written, that is hot, which means it's marijuana, we have to destroy the whole field. You're saying that you could take that plant or those 10 plants out and either remediate them or destroy those 10 plants, not have to get rid of the whole field?
Yes. we
makes
would be
sense.
able to remediate anything over that level. A problem that the testing happened before, and I think that we have resolved a lot of that within the state of Georgia, is they were taking just part of the plant, the most matured part of the plant, and testing it. Now they're testing pretty much from the bottom to top of the plant, pulling samples versus trying to take what is the most mature. That way it's the average on testing.
It's 6 o'clock.
Mr. Chair, one more question.
I hadn't recognized you at 6 o'clock. We'll get him back here on Tuesday if we need to. All right, I am sorry, but it is 6, and we promised we'd be done by then. We will adjourn for today. We'll be back Tuesday at 4 o'clock. If anybody has additional information you want to submit to me, feel free to do that beforehand if you can't be here live to testify. Be glad to get as much education as possible.
That's for the whole city.
Yes, sir. You sure can.